Today is March 9th at 3:30 a.m. GMT time. On 26th of February, I came across a video from the FPÖ TV. The FPÖ is a party located in Austria, and they are very critical about the current developments as they appear regarding the handling of the pandemic. The video itself is related to an executive report of a commission for handling SARS-CoV-19, in short form called GECKO. As it is in German, I take the liberty of roughly doing a translation, and later on I will give you some more details on my own research, which I conducted after watching the video, as there are reasons to ensure that this is a real document, that there's no such thing as fake news, there's nothing being tampered with, as well as we looking into the matter of the document. What are the other aspects we can find apart from the highlighted ones in this 2-minute video? So please bear with me as I do the translation instantly, and I do hope that you are able to learn something very effectively and efficiently, that we can learn from each other also in the future. Okay.
Erst in dieser Woche hat FPÖ TV aufgedeckt, dass man einem Executive Report der GECKO entnehmen kann, dass es niemals zu einem Impfzwang kommen dürfe.
In this week, FPÖ discovered a report, an executive report from GECKO, which indicates that there should never be a mandated vaccination methods to be implemented.
Denn inklusive Annahme zur Dunkelziffer per 2.2.2022 hatten bereits satte 93% der Menschen Kontakt mit dem Virus und/oder mit der Impfung.
Because inclusive of the unknown numbers or the dark numbers, since 2nd of February 2022, there was at least, or there have been at least 93% of the population being either infected or have been vaccinated.
Doch jetzt kommt es noch unfassbarer.
But now it's becoming even more unbelievable.
Auf Seite 7 des Executive Reports der GECKO vom 18. Februar 2022 stellte die Kommission nicht nur die Impfung, sondern auch andere Covid-Maßnahmen in Frage.
Because on page 7 of the Executive Report from 18th of February 2022, the GECKO report is not just questioning the vaccination itself, but it also questions other measures taken to handle the current pandemic. I will not translate right now the script as we will be looking into that closer after the video has been played, and I will focus more on it later on as well. So we'll just watch the video until these parts have been.
Noch Fragen, liebe türkis-grüne Bundesregierung?
Do you have any further questions? The turquoise-green federal government?
Faktum ist, nach diesen Ausführungen muss der gesetzliche Impfzwang endlich Geschichte sein.
As a matter of fact, after these statements, the mandatory vaccination should be part of the past and no longer valid.
Und zwar noch heute. Weder die
Immediately.
Beibehaltung noch die Aussetzung der Impfpflicht ist in irgendeiner Form zu rechtfertigen.
Neither to continue to implement vaccination or making it lawful for mandatory vaccination can be continued with these statements.
Die FPÖ lässt nicht locker. Und
the FPÖ party does not stop there.
Beantragt im Parlament erneut die Abschaffung der Impfpflicht.
And is again requesting in federal parliament the removal of a mandatory vaccination law.
Konkret wird die FPÖ einen Fristsetzungsantrag einbringen, mit dem über jenen Antrag abgestimmt werden soll, der aktuell im Gesundheitsausschuss liegt.
In particular, the FPÖ will request a timed report and a deadline regarding the already in the federal government or Ministry of Health sitting request to stop the mandatory vaccination, which hasn't been answered yet.
Aber dort laufend vertagt wird.
Einfach deshalb, weil wir davon überzeugt sind, dass die Menschen in diesem Land ein Recht darauf haben, jetzt endlich zu erfahren, was ist da los.
Herbert Kickl, the FPÖ party leader, insists that the population and their members, as well as the party itself and everyone in Austria, should have the right to know what is exactly going on and what needs to be done.
Im Zusammenhang mit der Impfpflicht. Wie geht das jetzt weiter? Was ist Sache? Wird das jetzt abgeschafft? Ja oder nein?
Regarding the mandatory vaccination, how is it going to continue on? Will it be eradicated? Yes or no?
Das ist die Frage, die sich ganz, ganz viele Menschen in diesem Land stellen. Und Ihnen, diesen Menschen und mir fehlt das Verständnis für dieses Herumgeeiere seitens der Regierungsparteien, das wir da seit der Ausrufung des Freiheitstags über uns ergehen lassen müssen.
That's what the people, citizens of the country are asking for. That's what we are asking for. And there is no explanation or understanding why this request has not been handled yet since the Freedom Day, and it's been just being pushed around and is not being addressed. Here is the highest controversy of this whole executive report when it comes to testing. Although coronavirus cannot be compared directly with influenza virus, even though SARS-CoV-2 is part of the influenza family, one can build on many years national and international experience on part of influenza surveillance. In the case of influenza, it has been considered sufficient for many decades, also internationally, to have a nationwide surveillance system, a sentinel system, where randomly tested people with symptomatic respiratory infections to be monitored for the spread of the virus. Let me repeat. Randomly tested people with symptomatic respiratory infections are to be monitored regarding the spread of the virus. Random sequencing is carried out from these examples and the data is exchanged internationally in a timely manner through various portals, as you can see here. And this has proven to be sufficient to rapidly identify and monitor the virus population that may be emerging when it comes to influenza. Based on the experience of influenza surveillance, it cannot be assumed that the overview of the case history will be lost and or newly emerging virus variants will not be detected in good time if highly quality surveillance is used instead of case-based quantitative data collection, as it is currently the case for SARS-CoV. It should be taken into account that the targeted testing strategy mentioned in the question apparently provides for significantly more tests than the usual influenza strategy anyway. In particular, the promising wastewater surveillance. As per Magistrate Wolfgang Müller of the city of Vienna on the question of testing, I do not agree with the draft executive report of the Commission on State-of-the-Art COVID Crisis Coordination, GECKO is short form. Both the question and the answer about testing distort the factual state of affairs by reducing the currently rampant pandemic to seasonal influenza levels. Even in its current form, SARS-CoV-2 is not comparable to seasonal influenza, either in terms of infectivity or pathogenicity. Both the question and answer about testing distort the factual state of affairs by reducing the currently rampant pandemic to seasonal influenza levels. Yet the rest of the expert committee believes that it is a seasonal, recurrent endemic, and that we will have to deal with that, same as we do with influenza. Mr. Magistrat Müller even goes this far as saying the corona epidemic is a global health threat that has been declared a pandemic by the WHO and is not another flu wave. If one agrees with those represented, this means from my point of view that the legal and other measures taken up to now have been entirely wrong. Now here's a man who disagrees with the recommendation of the expert committee, stating that we cannot compare influenza to SARS-CoV-2, we cannot compare the recurrent yearly endemic of the influenza to an anticipated endemic of SARS-CoV-2, which also seems to be recurring at least once a year. Because if we do so, then all the measures, lockdown, closing of schools, wearing masks, mandatory vaccination, safe distancing measures, and restrictions on travel, for example, like they do in Austria, would have been entirely wrong. The GECKO Commission consists of experts from different disciplines and is chaired by Dr. Katrina Reich, who is the Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, and Major General Rudolf Strüdinger, Deputy Chief of Staff in the Ministry of Defense. GECKO advises the federal government on questions of combating the corona pandemic. The advice extends in particular to the following areas. First, assessment of the current COVID-19 situation. Second, vaccination, medication, and testing strategy. Third, operational implementation. Fourth, information of the population. The Commission institutionalizes and enables an ongoing exchange of information. GECKO reports weekly to the federal government, which derives political decisions based on GECKO recommendations. The Commission appears externally in the form of the assessments published as an executive report on the website of the Federal Chancellery. In addition, when acting in their role as chair of the Commission, the two chairs speak for the Commission as a whole. Now, let me go back to page 7 here for you, where the statements which is highlighted in the report can be found. The video itself does not state under the heading these paragraphs has been written or appeared. And to simplify, the heading is basically immunity against infection and therefore passing on of the infection. Let's have a look closer on this method here for you, for the translation as well. Here we go. The first statement, which was mentioned in the video just now. Nach allen bisherigen wissenschaftlichen Ergebnissen schützt weder eine oder mehrere durchgemachte Infektionen noch einer der Impfstoffe auch nach mehrmaliger Verabreichung eine bestimmte einzelne Person zuverlässig und langfristig gegen Infektion und Transmission des Virus. Which basically means, according to all scientific results to date, neither one or more past infections nor one of the vaccines, even after repeated administration, reliably nor long-term protects a specific individual person against infection and transmission of the virus. The second statement, which was mentioned in the report just now, dazu kommt, dass die einzelnen Varianten, die bisher aufgetreten sind, unterschiedliche Grade der Immunevasion zeigen und anzunehmen ist, dass die weitere Evolution des SARS-CoV-2-Virus darauf abzielen wird, sich bestehender Immunität, aus welcher Quelle auch immer, zu entziehen. In addition, the individual variants that have appeared to so far show different degrees of immune evasion, and it can be assumed that the further evolution of the SARS-CoV virus too will aim to evade existing immunity from whatever source. The last statement mentioned just now. Demnach erscheint es zum gegenwärtigen Zeitpunkt sehr unwahrscheinlich, dass eine transmissionsrelevante Immunität auf Dauer erzielbar ist und dass damit durch einen kollektiven Schutz es auch tatsächlich gelingen könnte, die Infektion zu eliminieren. Which translates to, it therefore seems very unlikely at the present time that transmission-relevant immunity can be achieved in the long term, and that collective protection could actually succeed in eliminating the infection. Now, what does that mean for all of us? Think about it. This paragraph basically explains that it doesn't matter if you have been infected by SARS-CoV-2 virus or if you have been immunized through vaccinations against SARS-CoV-2 virus. Neither of them would give sufficient protection against the spreading and dissemination of subsequent variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which may appear in community. It is quite a bummer to understand that we suddenly don't have the ability to be immune and get this herd immunity as it's been requested by governments all over the world. And here there's a commission, an executive who writes an executive report which advises the federal government of Austria regarding their mandates, their actions, and their measures to contain the spread of the virus and even to eliminate the spread of the virus, stating that whatever you did is useless, because at the end of the day, SARS-CoV-2 virus, when it goes into an endemic, will be another virus we deal with every single year through a new variant. The variants will be based on prevailing measures. And that's where I would like to take you in this report a bit further down, which was not mentioned in the video. Because the GECKO Commission also mentioned a few parts regarding the effectiveness and the assumption, the effectiveness of vaccination, as well on proceedings, how to deal with SARS-CoV-2 in the future. In regards to this matter, let me share with you this statement here. Build up immunity to prevailing variants. In the case of SARS-CoV-2, the immunity situation seems to gradually improve with the number of contacts, whether through vaccination or recovery. The development of immunity thus follows generally valid basic immunological laws, whereby the number of immunological events is relevant, not so much to their nature. This means that a COVID infection contributes to building up immunity in a similar way to partial vaccination, which is already summarized in the National Vaccination Panel recommendations for use of COVID vaccinations, NIGs. The intervals between these immunological events are also relevant. while the first 2 events are ideally spaced a few weeks apart, a minimum of 4 months should elapse before the third event, affinity maturation of the B cell pool, in order to induce the desired booster effect. This booster effect is not only associated with an improvement in protection, but also with an increase in duration, whereby a distinction must be made between antibody response, rather short-lasting over a few months, and cell-mediated immunity, at least up to a year. Numerically, there are at least 3 immunological events that lead to good immunity against serious disease. It is not clear at what interval this immunity is to be refreshed. This is where the scenarios described in the previous question come into play. Before serious illness, hospitalization, deaths occur, a regular variant-adapted vaccination once a year before the start of the season will be sufficient to refresh pre-existing immunity through vaccination or illness, because at least all previous data point to a longer-term persistence of the cell-mediated wave immunity. This basically states that, yeah, it is recurrent, most likely yearly recurrent, same as the current flu or influenza, and generic booster shot or just a yearly vaccination shot should be sufficient to build up the already existing immunity. Now, this report goes further on to discuss a few matters apart from vaccination. They are referring to long COVID and the understanding, what the impact is with long COVID, how long COVID serves against people unvaccinated and vaccinated. And they are referring to various studies in this report. Now, I took the liberty of checking out all of those studies. And one very concerning factor, which I found on most of those studies, and I'll show you one of them here from, let me show you this one here, which is published on NetRxiv. All these links I will put in the comment section as well. Yet it is a reference they're using. But what is most concerning is this article is a preprint and has not been peer reviewed. It reports new medical research that has yet to be evaluated and so should not be used to guide clinical practice. Same goes for this study, reduced incidence of long COVID symptoms related to administration of COVID-19 vaccinations, association between vaccination status and reported incidence of post-acute COVID-19 symptoms in Israel. And these are just 3. There's a whole list of studies they're referring to, which are even useless. There's a study they're referring to, which leads, and the linkage in their report, which leads to this website, where then a consortium on long COVID webcast was conducted in New York. Now, this link, as it is, appears in the document, does state we should find the information, but there's no reference to it. There you go. That's the document, Department of Health in New York, panelists on the particular reference. Well done. And who's the moderator? Now, it doesn't really state if they're receiving any financial contributions from anybody or how they're associated to pharmaceutical companies, hospitalization, how they stand in contact with the government regulatory authorities. So there is a bit of lack of knowledge in that method itself. And it's regarding long COVID in children, or how it affects children itself. Now, Let me read the statement here for you. Now, there are no indications from several well-controlled studies that, in their preliminary aggregate, indicate a low risk of long COVID in children. Jenny reports 97% of all children aged 5 to 11 had fully recovered from COVID-19 after 4 weeks. In a small group of children who had symptoms beyond 4 weeks, most of which was loss of smell or fatigue, most of them fully recovered after 8 weeks. Overall, it is concluded that the prolonged course of disease in children, while occurring, is rare. That means children are stronger, their immune system is better equipped to overcome any challenges with COVID, even without vaccination. A vaccination would not be required. Now, to further go on, some of these studies, which I mentioned, have been conducted during the first lockdown in March 2020 in Austria. Or in Switzerland, that's even referring to a Swiss study. Here, my apologies. March 2020. And when you look at all these studies in itself, the time frame when they have been conducted, it was all in the, most of them were completed in the first half of 2021. Knowing that children are less likely to be infected or have a stronger immune system and recover better and faster than adults, should never make it mandatory to vaccinate children, in my opinion. And with these last statements, I leave the rest to you. You can make your own assumptions based on this report. I'm sure there's more reports coming out as we go along. Nevertheless, I hope that whatever was discovered in Austria, whatever studies are referenced to, which are incomplete, not even peer-reviewed yet at the time of me investigating these reports, which you will see clearly in my entered as well when I searched, when I visited the article, what I found with links and everything added to it. I leave it to you. I hope that you do your due diligence, comment section, share with me any of my comments I made were incorrect, and we are more than happy to bring it up to the GECKO Commission because it is their executive report I was referencing based on a publication from the FPÖ party in Austria. These details can be found on the Chancellery website of Austria. These reports are there. The referencing materials are to English studies, reviews, they're all in English. I even signed up for one of the websites, the Med Journal, just to access the study there itself. Nevertheless, in my opinion, we need to be open. We need to accept that difference in opinion is always valuable, that no one opinion can save us from anything. I do hope that my German and English speaking friends and haters and enemies and different thinkers and Querdenker, as they say it in German, have a commentary to add to this, provide more insights into their thinking, because only through open discourse, only through open discussion, we can overcome these seriousness of pandemic, call it what you want. At the end of the day, it is your point of view, which I respect. Please respect my point of view as well.